Now, you also have a podcast of your own at the Daily Wire, and I was kind of curious, I'm just starting my podcasting journey now, but you've been at it a while. Does it change the way you look at headlines, the way you kind of break down the culture? You've been observing this for a long time, and you write and write and write, but podcasting is a different beast. Talk about how it's changed your approach, if it has at all.
Oh, the one thing about it that I've had to get used to emotionally is this. As a writer, and this is one of the reasons I am a writer, you sit in a room by yourself and you craft the sentence. And if you get it wrong, you go back and craft it again. And if you get it wrong, you craft it again, and then you try to make it better, and then you try to make it more precise and more perfect, and you go over it and over it and over it. And by the time you go out into the world, people are going to read what you really think. They're going to read your deepest conviction expressed as precisely as you can. When you I do this 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, you're kind of going in and just saying, well, this happened today, and here's my feeling about it. And that was very hard for me to get used to. It was hard for me to get used to expressing an opinion before really thinking it over deeply and knowing that I might have to come back and say, no, you know what, I got that wrong. And just do that out in public. It was very uncomfortable for me. I'm a guy who likes to get it right before I come out into the world. But that said, I'm having the time of my life. I never expected it to be this much fun. I never expected, and one of the things that of course happened was this, I'm basically, my attitude toward politics is a satirical attitude. With this election, it was like being on welfare. It was applying the satire. When you have Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, you can't help but be hilariously funny, because they're being funny for you. And it was one of the elections of my life. It was one of the great elections of my life. It was worth talking about. It was worth feeling my way through. How was I going to vote? I despised Hillary Clinton, but I didn't like Donald Trump very much. I came around to the point where I said, no, I'm going to vote for this guy who's better than her. And I did that on the air. It all happened. Instead of happening in my room, me just scratching my chin, it all happened out loud. I was very honest about it. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And that thought developed. So it's been a little difficult for the very private guy to get used to sort of thinking out loud on the air.
You'll be taking selfies next, so be careful.
That's exactly. Gotta help me.
Does being a podcaster influence you as a storyteller? I mean, does that have any effect on you?
The only influence that podcasting and making videos, because I made these, kind of Klavan on the culture and Truth Revolt videos before this, is, you publish a book, especially in the old days, you publish a book, and before you get a reaction, even before you knew whether the book sold, it could be 6 months to a year. So you weren't getting this real-time reaction. In podcasting, and when you're doing stuff on the internet, you get a reaction right away. Now, some of that reaction has to be discounted because sometimes the ugliest, angriest people are the first people to comment. The people who hate everybody, who love their own anger, or they're the people who show up on comment sections all the time. But pretty rapidly, you learn how to parse the reaction, and you get this immediate sense of the audience out there. And I have found that really helpful as a writer, because as a writer, you're in your own head, and you don't get a reaction until, like I said, 6 months or a year later. But to know who the audience is a little bit, I feel it has helped me communicate with them better.
Gotcha. I've been reading some interesting stories the last few days, and they deal with Trump's America, as we're calling it, and Hollywood's reaction. Now, we've seen the sillier side of Hollywood's reaction, the meltdowns and the tweets. But I've also heard some studio executives talking about, hey, maybe we need to rethink the kind of content. Maybe we need to be more blue-collar friendly, maybe more sort of acknowledge flyover country a bit better. Now, you're a screenwriter as well as a novelist as well as an app creator, and sort of you're crossing all the boundaries there. What's your reaction to that? I mean, as a consumer and as someone who covers the industry, I'm applauding it tentatively. What's your take?
Well, I'm startled by it. I read the piece. In fact, when you called me, I was reading this piece in the Hollywood Reporter about producers for TV saying, hey, maybe we have misrepresented these people. Maybe these people are not just to be mocked, but also to be represented as characters in our stories. And I was absolutely stunned that they would say that. I mean, that has been something I've been preaching for so long. This goes throughout the culture. It's not just in Hollywood. That so much of our culture is set up for the elites. So much of our sexual morality is fine if you happen to be elite, but is absolutely destructive if you happen to be poor. It may be fine for elites to have a number of affairs because ultimately they get married and they have their children in wedlock and they can afford to pay for their mistakes. But if you're poor and you start to produce children who have to be aborted, which can be horribly distorting to a woman's mind, or who have to grow up without a father, which means perennial poverty, generational poverty, these things are really destructive. And the same thing is true of our culture. It's set up for California and New York, and it's not set up for the rest of the country. And I don't see why that should be. This country was meant to belong to the people, and I don't think it's meant to belong to New York and California only. They're included in the people, but I don't think it's meant to belong to them only. And one of the things that's been kind of interesting about my career is I am an elite. I've only lived in places like New York and California, and yet my heart has always been with the people. I've been in every state in this country. I've traveled everywhere. I've talked to all kinds of people, and I really do think that the people in Hollywood and New York do not know the rest of us are there. And if Trump wakes them up to that, it will be an achievement in and of itself.
Gotcha. I agree. There's a part of me that kind of chuckles over the celebrity meltdowns, but another part of me, at the end of the day, I love Hollywood as much as I critique it at times. And I wonder what these celebrities, these name actors and actresses, are doing to their brands. I mean, when Michael Shannon comes out and says the Trump fans they're ready for the urn, I'm thinking, could this have sort of a longer term effect, or do you think that maybe in a year we'll forget all the hyperbolic comments and kind of just go to the same movies we've been going? Could this stain or at least break the connection between actors and audiences?
Oh, I think it already has. I mean, one of the things that's really interesting, if you look during the election, remember they had that obnoxious Save the Day video where Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson and a number of really A-list stars came out and kind of wagged their fingers at us and said, this is very important. They kept repeating words over and over again. They said, we're idiots, this is very important, very important. Like we were like 3 years old. Well, obviously, it was yesterday or the day before, they made a new video trying to convince Republican electors to dump Trump, to turn on Trump. But if you looked at the names there, you got guys like Martin Sheen, actors, most of the actors in the video were like 100 years old, were kind of, B-list stars, kind of featured players and all this stuff. And I think that most of the big stars must have looked at that and said, we didn't do ourselves any good with that. In fact, maybe we were a little less popular than we were. Maybe we ought to shut up our mouths and just sing. Mm-hmm. Shut up and sing. And listen, obviously everybody has a right to his opinion, and I'm a writer who tries to write entertaining stuff, and yet I'm out here expressing my opinion. But you do have to understand that when you're Robert Downey Jr. or Scarlett Johansson and you come out and tell people how to vote, you are essentially trading on one form of expertise to pretend you have another form of expertise. You're trading on your immense talent and genetic good looks, which make you very appealing to us, and I love to watch actors work. I know you do too. Scarlett Johansson is a wonderful actress. She's trading on that talent and saying, because I can pretend to be somebody else convincingly, I also know a lot about politics. And that is a betrayal. That's a betrayal of your audience. That's lying to your audience effectively, because you have your megaphone is much bigger than your voice. You're just a little tiny person with a gigantic megaphone. I'm a writer, so I'm reading stuff all the time. I read very deeply into politics. I don't just mouth off on politics. It's different for me to talk about politics because I spend a lot of my time getting informed. I simply don't believe that's true of Scarlett Johansson. I believe she's an intelligent woman. I believe she's normally informed, but her voice is so much louder than her knowledge that it's just not fair. Mm-hmm. And I think that they ought to speak with a little bit more respect for the people who give them the money they have and the lifestyle they have and the fame and the adulation they have, and maybe listen to them once in a while. I do. I didn't like Donald Trump, and when the people voted for him, I stopped and I said to myself, you know what? The people have told you to get stuffed. Listen to what they're saying because it's their country, and I've been listening very attentively ever since then. Mm-hmm. And I get the feeling that these guys are just impervious to information. They get told all day long how great they are, how beautiful, how brilliant, how talented, and now they think it's true.
Yeah.
And it's a big, big mistake.
People suggest that Trump's rise was partly due to a reaction to political correctness, and that he was so politically incorrect, even if you didn't like what he was saying, it was refreshing. And then I think about some of the things that Trump and some of his fans have done in recent months, and the thin skin is obvious and pronounced. Could while we're smashing the PC culture on one end, could things sort of pave the way for something even more toxic down the road, or is that sort of too fear-mongering to even consider?
No, I don't think it is at all. I mean, one of the things you have to understand, I always tell people you want to be a conservative. You don't want to be a reactionary. You don't want to create your feelings in a reaction to other people. One of the problems with the left is the left is very good at taking a little core, a little mustard seed of truth and goodness, and blowing it up into a preposterous structure of absolute idiocy, oppression, and lies. Okay, so you start out with the environment. Is there anybody who doesn't want clean air and clean water? Is there anybody who doesn't want to take care of the earth? Of course not. We all want that. But you blow this up into this global warming hysteria, and we're all going to die if you drive a big car, and if you don't believe in this complete nonsense that's just built on computer models, then you're some kind of Holocaust denier. Then you take that environmental truth and you turn it into a lie. The same thing is true of political correctness. I believe political correctness is one of the great oppressive movements ever. It's a socialist, it's a left-wing communist creation, really, the idea of political correctness. It is an oppression of the mind. It is an attempt to internalize oppression. It deserves to be destroyed. But of course, at its heart is that little mustard seed, that little kernel of politeness, of tolerance, of kindness. And of course we don't want to get rid of that. And that was one of the things that really disturbed me about Donald Trump. The lies, Ted Cruz's father killed Kennedy and his wife is ugly, that stuff, I understood the joy people had. I had joy. I felt joy. I still feel joy when Trump turns to the press and says, you people are corrupt, you're dirty, and you're failing, and nobody cares about you. I love it. You can't kick those people hard enough for me. But to turn to a candidate, a serious man, a senator, and say, "Oh, your wife is ugly and your father killed Kennedy," that really is a transgression on basic decency. And so, yes, I fear that we can obviously go too far in breaking down the oppressive structures of the left. We have to be careful not to destroy the little kernel of truth inside them. And one of the things that I've taken hope in is that Trump has changed. If you go back and watch his early campaigning and his later campaigning, it's two different guys. I'm not saying he's changed in his character, but he's learned something about how to communicate. And if he can learn something, he can learn more. And so I have a little bit of hope about that.
Gotcha. Well, there's lots of other things we could talk about, but before I let you go, you're always doing different new things. You've got young adult novels, you've got screenplays. Let's peer into your head just one more time. What's on tap of you next, or do you have a rare blank slate where you're just looking for new assignments?
No, I actually took a year and stopped. I'm almost always writing a novel, but I actually took a year and stopped because the memoir was coming out. I didn't want to compete with it. I wanted to think about it, and I did a lot of smaller stuff, short stories and graphic novels and all this. But once the memoir came out, I immediately started writing a novel again, and I'm writing something that's very, very different than anything I've ever done, and I'm just loving it. So I hope it's as good as it feels. You never know until I never know until I show it to my wife, and she says this is great, or she says what on earth are you talking about? But I am writing a new novel, which I hope will be the first in a short series of novels, and I'm eager to get back into screen work. It's very difficult to do the political stuff and also do screen work, but I'm eager to get back into it because there are a lot of places now where I'm a toxic personality, and I'll go in and do a meeting, and we'll obviously get along, and then I'll never hear from the guy because he obviously Googled me and found out who I was. But I'm hoping in the new year I've got some stuff on offer, and I'm hoping to do some more screen work as well. But gotcha. I'm really involved in this novel.
All right, we'll look forward to that. Again, thank you, Andrew Klavan, for being on the show, and we will talk to you soon.
It's always a pleasure, Christian. Thanks a lot.
Well, thanks again for listening. Don't forget